Hi, I'm David. I own and operate Country Whatnot Gardens here outside of Rochester, Indiana, which is about an hour south of the Michigan state line. I grow 25 different species and varieties of bamboo. And in addition to bamboo, I enjoy practicing Japanese gardening techniques. And I'm going to talk about one of those techniques here today, rock placement. So let's take a look at this rock. This rock was placed here at least 20 years ago. And it has sunk in a little bit, which is traditional way to display rocks, large rocks in Japanese gardens. Like that one over there. Now, these rocks, when they were drug out here with a tractor, they were just left set on top of the ground. And that's not the traditional Japanese way. Traditional Japanese way would be to bury your rock a good ways, third, half sometimes deep. Now, we have really soft ground here in the spring. And until we put these paths in, we had trouble getting out here even in the spring without sinking practically up to our ankles or past in mud, because this clay soil lays so wet in the spring. So the soft soil in the spring has really helped with sinking my rocks down to where they should be. And I took a shovel last year and explored around some of these rocks that I first took and put out here, and they have sunk in a good ways. So if I had buried them, like would be the traditional technique, I would have probably lost a good bit more of the rock, and the rocks would actually even disappear sooner in time than what they should. Now, this one over here, I just put this one over here last year. It's a smaller rock. It's less weight to it. So I did bury it and sink it in a good ways, just to be more traditional. There's rocks all over the garden. Let's see, that big one I showed earlier, and this one over here. This one over here is sunk in a little bit, probably not as far as it should be. There's rocks down here. Most of the rocks were just put out here, and I didn't bury them at the time because it was just me doing it at the time. And it's hard to move rocks, get them in a hole and everything, setting the way you want them straightly and so forth, just one person. So these were left sit, but like I say, the soil is so soft in the spring that the rocks, I find, just settle right in on their own. Now, if you had firmer ground, then of course I would suggest sinking them in a little bit. This rock down here is one of my favorites, and it has sunk in over the years, and you can see how it meets up nicely with the soil and everything all the way around, and it looks like it's always been there. It's not just dropped in. That's the purpose, really, of setting rocks, is you don't want them to look like they were just dropped in new. You want them to look like they've always been there. And rocks that have always been there, of course, have settled in and sunk in and gotten right into the ground. Now, this one here, it was buried when it was first set in, and you can see it's sitting there. You can tell it's sunk in like it's supposed to be. Traditionally, this is a rain garden, and you would want your water to flow from northeast to southwest, respectively into and then out of the garden to the southwest. So I put these rocks here facing this way, as if maybe floodwaters in the past or something had washed them this way. So they're leaning in the direction that water movement should be implied. Now, you might ask, what is under here? And the answer was that I had a big liriope plant there, just the common green form, nothing real special. But I had also planted there years ago some of this little Pleuoblastus disticus, and it had just mixed too much to suit me. So, as I've spoken about before, is anytime you want to control or remove any bamboo, especially the small one, just cut off its photosynthesis. That's all you have to do. You don't have to spray it. You don't have to dig it out or whatever. Cut off its photosynthesis, and it'll die right under there because it's not getting in sunlight. That's just weed barrier. No light's getting through. Let's lift it up and have a look. I didn't plan on including this in the video, but while I'm here, might as well. There, check it out. See? croaking. But I'll leave that there for, another year or two yet anyway, just to be sure. And then I'll just start over with a liriope plant. I was able to take off a division off of that one and weed out some of the little ground cover bamboo roots out of it and save some of that liriope. But the rest of it that was left there was just, it was too much. You just couldn't fish all the little Pleoblastus roots out of it. So I'm just wiping it out, and I'll start with a clean slate. Sometimes you put a little ground cover bamboo someplace you don't want it, and it starts to spread too much, and you just cover it and kill it off and take it out and start over. No big deal. People fret about controlling bamboo, and it's not, unless you've got a big one. Gosh, I don't know, unless you've got maybe acres of it that have been neglected or something, then it might be a bigger deal, but it's really not that big of a deal. Cut it down, keep it from photosynthesizing, and you'll starve those roots out after a couple years. But I noticed something over here I wanted to show too. Let's see, here we go. This is turning into a miscellaneous video other than rock setting. I am near a rock I want to show. This is some Hibano bambusa that's still showing some real pretty variegation. This low patch of it here, this little spot, was under the snow, what little snow we had back around the middle part of January when we had that negative 8.86 degree Fahrenheit and wind, and you can still see there. So if you had a small to medium-sized bamboo and could cover it, even here in this zone 5B, it would be fine. It would, I think it would stay green, and you can just uncover it. But you can see the parts that were up in the wind, they wind burnt. But anyway, moving on to rocks, or top killed, I should say, about the bamboo. Moving on to rocks, here's another one that I like, and this one was sunk in. You can see how nice it looks next to the ground. Looks like it's always been there. And again, if you have soft ground, they will sink in on their own. These rocks over here, let's see, I have a Lampropcapnos planted by these rocks. These rocks here were buried and set in. You can see how they meet up with the ground. You can tell if a rock has always been there or not. Let me see if I can walk down in here without stepping on any iris crowns. I have iris planted in my rain garden, 3 different varieties of Iris sudata, the hybrid of Ensata and Pseudochorus, and it's sterile. They're non-invasive even to waterways. But here's a rock. This one was not buried and set in, but it has been here for, I think 20 years anyway. And you can see how nice it looks. It looks like it's always been there. There's no obvious signs that it wasn't buried when it was set in. And if you stand back, it looks like it's always been there, not just plopped in on top of the ground. And then if we go over this way, there is a rock that's standing up over here by the Hibano bambusa and a Miskim lilac back there. And you can see this rock. It was not buried and set in as is traditional, but you can see it's been there so long it's just sunk in. So if you want a rock to look like it has always been there, just immediately as soon as you place it, you want to bury it and set it in. If you have soft ground and can wait a few years, then nature will kind of take care of that whole process for you and bury the rock part way and set it into the ground itself. Here's a rock. This one was put here just last fall, and it was not buried, but it's not immediately apparent that it wasn't, because it's got fairly straight sides. It meets up with the ground. The moss is growing right up to it. It will sink in time on its own. This rock up here that this Tonka is engraved on, it is buried. And when we poured the cement around it with forms, You can see how it looks like it just meets up with its base there, but that rock actually goes another foot underground there. And so it does look like it's buried. And it was buried down into the ground before we poured the cement around it, and it has a compacted limestone base around it too, or underneath it, excuse me, underneath that concrete. Up here, there is a rock that was buried when it was set in, as is traditional to Japanese gardens. And you can see how it looks as compared to a rock that might have just been plopped in. But it's sitting there. It's buried with probably about a third of itself underground. And the rock leans or bows towards you too, for looking at it from the front side. It moves this way. Rocks, when they're facing away from you or leaning the other way, they kind of evoke a reaction in people to where you want to lean away from the rock instead of leaning in towards it and being invited, in essence, into the landscape to look around. And there's that big rock again that has been there for so long and so many years that it is sinking in on its own. So that has been a look at rocks, and I like rocks in the garden. It's hard to find enough rocks a lot of times in the US to do an accurate representation, so to speak, of a Japanese garden, because rocks just aren't as common or plentiful here. And all the rocks here I have got from our own property. I haven't bought any or brought any in. They've all been found here on the property from old rock piles. But anyway, a lot of people from Japan I hear visit gardens, and they're like, well, where are all the rocks, you know? So sometimes we have to make do with what we have, but arranging them in traditional ways can help a lot of times, as far as placement and the way they're set in, actually burying them or setting them in, or just waiting so long that the rocks sink in on their own, which I guess is another option. But anyway, if you liked the video, please like, subscribe, and share. I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, take care, and thank you for stopping by. Bye.